In this lecture, we will be discussing about the various energy storage systems. So we have to study the classification of energy storage systems. So before moving on to the classification, let us see what are energy storage systems. What is meant by an energy storage system? So energy storage is a means for storing energy in a readily recoverable form when the supply exceeds the demand for using at other times. That is, as the word itself indicates, energy storage is a means for storing energy. Energy store ചെയ്യാനുള്ള ഒരു മാർഗമാണ് energy storage. When the supply exceeds the demand, when there is excess of energy supply than the demand, we can store that excess of energy. How? It should be in a readily recoverable form. That is, we could get it back quickly whenever we need it. So that is known as an energy storage system. It is a means for storing energy in a form which can be easily recovered for using at other times. And when do we are storing energy? When there is excess of energy supply, which is more than the demand. So that is energy storage. So now, necessity of energy storage. Why do we have to store energy? What is the need for storing energy? So first one, the effective utilization of intermittent and variable energy. So while discussing about the renewable energy sources, we have seen that the renewable resources like solar and wind are variable in nature, because that means they are not continuously available. We cannot predict about their availability. So they are variable and intermittent. So we cannot connect the output of a solar or wind power plant directly to a load which requires continuous supply of energy. So ഈ സോളാറും വിൻഡും ഒക്കെ കണ്ടിന്യൂസ്ലി അവൈലബിൾ അല്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ കണ്ടിന്യൂസ് പവർ റിക്വയർമെൻ്റ് ഉള്ള ഒരു ലോഡിന് നമുക്കിതിൻ്റെ ഔട്ട്പുട്ട് ഡയറക്റ്റ് കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല. സോ വാട്ട് വി ക്യാൻ ഡു ഇസ് we can store the energy output from these plants, from solar or wind plants, whenever they are available. So we can store energy when they are available and we can use it other times when it is needed. So second point is, there are certain cases where electrical energy is generated at a location, either at land or at sea, which is too distant from the load centers. So which is too distant from the consumers, so that we cannot use the conventional transmission lines for transmitting electric power from that location towards the consumers. So an example for this is the ocean thermal energy conversion. Ocean thermal energy conversion. So we have discussed about this in the first class itself. Ocean thermal energy conversion is nothing but the utilization of thermal energy in the ocean surface. Thermal energy from the surface water of the ocean for the production of electrical energy. So ഈ ocean thermal energy conversion plants എപ്പോഴും എവിടെ ആയിരിക്കും ലൊക്കേറ്റ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്? It will be in the ocean. So the electrical energy generated there is very difficult to be transmitted to the consumers because it is too distant from the consumers or from the load centers. So in that cases, it will be economical to store the energy and then transport this energy storage to the load centers. So that is one necessity. And the next point is electric vehicles. So we know that electric vehicles are becoming very popular nowadays. So as these vehicles are moving around, they definitely need a portable energy source. So next one is for load leveling in power system network. So what is load leveling? So we know that in a power system network there is peak hours as well as off-peak hours. So load demand is very high during the peak hours and it is low during the off-peak hours. So during off-peak hours there will be excess of energy supply than the demand. So if we store the excess energy during the off-peak hours, we can use this energy during the peak hours, so that the load in the power system network can be leveled. അതായത് പീക്ക് അവേഴ്സിലും ഓഫ് പീക്ക് അവേഴ്സിലും ഏതാണ്ട് നമുക്ക് ഒരേപോലെ വരുന്ന ലോഡ്സിനെ സപ്ലൈ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. That is known as load leveling in power system network. So these are the various necessities of energy storage. Now let us move on to the classification of energy storage methods. So energy can be stored in different forms, and this classification is based on the form in which energy is stored. So depending on the form, energy storage can be classified into mechanical storage, chemical storage, electromagnetic storage, electrostatic storage, thermal energy storage, and biological energy storage. So we have to study these 5 types. Except biological energy storage, we have to study all the remaining 5 types in detail. The mechanical energy storage can further be classified into 3 types: pumped storage, compressed air storage, and flywheel storage. Chemical energy storage is also of 3 types: battery storage, hydrogen storage, and reversible chemical reaction storage. So here the thermal energy storage is of 2 types: sensible heat storage and latent heat storage. So now let us see the details of each of these types. So first, the mechanical energy storage. And the first type of mechanical energy storage is the pumped storage. So this pumped storage facility is usually incorporated with the conventional hydroelectric power plants. So this is used for storing substantial amount of electrical energy. So pumped storage is actually for the storage of electrical energy, even if it is stored as mechanical energy. So here electrical energy is stored by pumping water from a lower reservoir to an upper reservoir. So this is a schematic diagram of a conventional hydroelectric power plant. So all of us are aware about the operation of a conventional hydroelectric power plant. So there will be a reservoir located at a high head where water is stored, and there will be a powerhouse where the turbine generator assembly is located, and the water from this reservoir is allowed to fall on the turbine through large diameter pipes known as penstocks. And when water falls on the turbine rotates, and the generator coupled to the turbine also rotates, thereby generating electrical energy. So the energy generated can be then transmitted to the consumers, to the load centers. So this is the operation of a conventional hydroelectric power plant, and this pumped storage facility is incorporated in the conventional hydro plants. So electricity is being generated in the hydroelectric power plant. So if the electricity generated is in excess of the demand, that is, if the generated electricity is more than the demanded power, demanded energy, we can use the excess electrical energy for pumping water from this lower reservoir to this upper reservoir. So that is what happening in a pumped storage system. So for water to be pumped from the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir, and for the generation process to take place, the turbine generator assembly in the powerhouse should be reversible in nature. A reversible turbine generator assembly should be used. എന്തുകൊണ്ടാ? 2 type operation നടക്കണം, generation as well as pumping. So there should be a reversible turbine generator assembly. So what happens in the generating mode? The generating mode, as we know, the turbine acts as a prime mover and it rotates the generator, which generates electrical energy. And in the pumping mode, we know that excess electrical energy is available. So by utilizing that electrical energy, the generator acts as a motor. നമുക്കറിയാലോ, electrical input ആണ് കൊടുക്കുന്നതെങ്കിൽ അതൊരു മോട്ടറായിട്ട് ആക്ട് ചെയ്യും. And this motor drives the turbine as a pump. The turbine now operates as a pump, and it pumps water from the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir. So that is what happens in a pumped storage system. So reversible turbine generator assembly should be used. So now for this system, the altitude difference, height difference required between the lower reservoir and upper reservoir is about 30 meter to 300 meter. And we have already said that reversible turbine generator assembly is required. So the turbine usually used is reversible Francis turbines. And for low head applications, propeller type turbines can also be used. So now let us look into the advantages of pumped storage systems. First one, relatively low capital cost and hence an economical source of peaking capacity. So we know it is actually incorporated with the conventional hydroelectric power plant. So there is no additional cost for energy storage. So this is economical. So next one, they are as rugged and as dependable as conventional hydro plants. They are same as the conventional hydro plants. They are as strong and as dependable as the conventional hydro plants, and they can pick up load rapidly. Sudden generation of electricity is possible and hence load can be supplied quickly. So next one, they are readily adaptable to automation and remote control. Automatic ആക്കാം ഈ സിസ്റ്റം. പമ്പിങ് എപ്പോൾ പമ്പിങ് നടക്കണം അങ്ങനെയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഓട്ടോമാറ്റിക് ആക്കാം. It is free from environmental pollution effects. We know that conventional hydropower plant is free from pollution effects. So next one, power required for pumping is available at a cheaper rate. So we are taking that power from that hydroelectric power plant itself. So power for pumping is available at a cheaper rate. Next one, it helps in load frequency control. Load frequency control is actually a broad topic in power system engineering. So load frequency control means we know that when the load on a particular generator changes, its speed will change. Speed change ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ ആരും ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്യും, ഫ്രീക്വൻസിയും ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്യും. So we have to keep the frequency of our power system network constant. So ലോഡ് ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനനുസരിച്ച് നമുക്ക് നമ്മുടെ സിസ്റ്റത്തിലെ ജനറേഷനും ചേഞ്ച് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കണം in order to keep the frequency constant. Suppose there is an increase in speed. Speed increase ചെയ്തെന്ന് വിചാരിച്ചു, സോറി ലോഡ് ഇൻക്രീസ് ചെയ്തെന്ന് വിചാരിച്ചു, എന്ത് പറ്റും? ഒരു മെഷീൻ്റെ സ്പീഡ് ഡിക്രീസ് ചെയ്യും. കറസ്പോണ്ടിങ്ലി ഇറ്റ്സ് ഫ്രീക്വൻസി വിൽ ഓൾസോ ഡിക്രീസ്. അപ്പം എന്ത് ചെയ്യണം? ഈ സ്പീഡ് കുറയാതിരിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി എന്ത് ചെയ്യണമായിരുന്നു? എത്രയാണോ ലോഡ് ഇൻക്രീസ് ചെയ്തത് അത്രയും കൂടി ആ മെഷീൻ്റെ ജനറേഷൻ, മെഷീൻ്റെ പവർ കൂട്ടിയാൽ ഇറ്റ് സ്പീഡ് വിൽ റിമൈൻ കോൺസ്റ്റന്റ്. സോ വി ഹാവ് ടു സപ്ലൈ ദാറ്റ് അഡീഷണൽ എമൗണ്ട് ഓഫ് പവർ. സോ ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് പോസിബിൾ വിത്ത് ദ ഹെൽപ്പ് ഓഫ് pumped storage systems. Our energy storage ഉണ്ട്. So we can easily increase the generation. So these are the advantages of pumped storage systems. So next one is the compressed air storage system. So this is also used for storing excess amount of electrical energy. If there is excess amount of electrical energy, it can be used for compressing air. And this compressed air can be stored in a reservoir, and whenever electrical energy is needed back, this compressed air can be used for driving a gas turbine which is coupled to a generator which can generate electrical energy. So that is the basic operation of a compressed air storage system. So this is a schematic diagram of a compressed air storage system. So there is a machine which can operate either as a motor or as a generator. So when excess of electrical energy is available, it is given to this machine and it acts as a motor. Electrical input കൊടുക്കുമ്പോൾ motor ആയിട്ട് act ചെയ്യും. So this acts as a motor, and this motor then drives a compressor. So this compressor sucks air from the atmosphere and it compresses that air to a pressure of about 70 atmospheric pressure, 70 atmospheric pressure. So we know when the pressure increases, when the pressure of air increases, its temperature will also increase. So we cannot directly store this hot compressed air into the reservoir because it will damage the reservoir walls. So we have to cool the air before passing it to the reservoir. So in the cooler, the air is cooled and then it is stored in the reservoir, compressed air reservoir. So whenever electrical energy is needed, this compressed air is released and it is heated in a combustor by means of burning some fuels. And this heated fuel is then used for driving a gas turbine. This gas turbine will be coupled to this motor generator unit. When the turbine operates, this machine will act as a generator and generates electrical energy. So this is the basic operation of a compressed air storage system. So here see this clutch. So these clutches are used for coupling, connecting or disconnecting this motor generator unit with the compressor and the gas turbine. That is, compress ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് ഇവിടെ ഡിസ്കണക്ട് ചെയ്യണം, ഇവിടെ കണക്ട് ചെയ്യണം. ഇനി ഇലക്ട്രിസിറ്റി തിരിച്ച് ജനറേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് കംപ്രസറിനെ ഡിസ്കണക്ട് ചെയ്യണം, ടർബൈനെ കണക്ട് ചെയ്യണം. So that is the purpose of the clutch. So now about the underground reservoir. About the compressed air reservoir. So if we are constructing the reservoir above the ground, it will be very expensive. So we have to go for underground construction of the compressed air reservoir. So instead of constructing a new underground reservoir, what we are actually doing is we can use natural underground caverns. Caverns means caves. Naturally occurring caves. Depleted gas or oil reservoirs. അതായത് ഗ്യാസോ ഓയിലോ ഒക്കെ എടുത്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ reservoirs, mines use ചെയ്യാം. Mined out rocks, etc. can be used for storing the compressed air. So that is all about compressed air storage. And now let us move on to the chemical energy storage. So the first chemical energy storage method is the battery storage. So we know about a battery. If electrical energy is available in excess, it can be stored in a battery and energy can be fed to the battery as direct current. DC ആയിട്ടാണ് ബാറ്ററിക്ക് കൊടുക്കുന്നത്. And the battery will then store this energy in the form of chemical energy. And whenever it is needed, we can directly connect the load across the battery. Then the battery will give the energy as electrical output. So we can say that both input to the battery as well as output from the battery are electrical, whereas energy is stored in the form of chemical energy. So let us see, there are different types of batteries we know. So for instance, let us see the lead acid battery in detail, which is the most commonly used battery. So we know a battery is a combination of a number of cells, and an electrochemical cell consists of a negative electrode, a positive electrode and an electrolyte. Here in lead acid battery, grid type electrodes are used. Here the negative electrode is coated with the paste of lead paste, and the positive electrode is coated with paste of lead oxide paste, and the electrolyte used is sulfuric acid, H2SO4. So this is a schematic diagram of a lead acid battery. So here see, the negative electrode is coated with lead, positive electrode with lead oxide, and this electrolyte is sulfuric acid. And when we have to charge the battery, a DC source is connected across the battery and switch S2 is closed. Discharge the load will be connected across the battery and switch S1 will be closed. Asamem S2 open. So this is a schematic of a lead acid battery, and let us see what are the reactions taking place in this lead acid battery. So this electrolyte always remains in the ionized form. So H2SO4 ionizes as H plus and HSO4 minus ions. And let us see what are the reactions taking place during the discharge operation, during the discharge of a battery, that is when a load is connected across the battery. So during the discharge, at the negative electrode, the HSO4 minus ions in the electrolyte combines with the lead paste and forms lead sulfate, and free electrons are also formed. So this lead sulfate PbSO4 gets deposited in the negative electrode in place of the lead paste. So negative electrode lead mari lead sulfate deposited out, and the free electrons generated will pass through the external load and reaches the positive electrode. So at the positive electrode, the PbO2 reacts with HSO4 minus ions, hydrogen ions, and the free electrons that it received, and it forms lead sulfate and water. So this lead sulfate, same as in the case of negative electrode, at the positive electrode also, this lead sulfate gets deposited on the positive electrode in place of lead oxide. So these are the reactions during the discharge process. So free electrons are formed and they passes through the load. That's discharge electrons, that is current nammade load kudi pass cheyana. Adu attain cheyidu kazhinju. Now during the charging process, these reactions reverses. That is, at the positive electrode, PbSO4 combines with 2H2O and forms PbO2. And in the negative electrode, PbSO4 and electrons and hydrogen ion combines and Pb is formed. That is, during the charging process, the original active materials, that is Pb and PbO2, are regenerated at the electrodes. So these are the operations happening in a lead acid battery. And the EMF, the voltage obtainable from a lead acid cell, a single cell, depends on the concentration of the sulfuric acid, and the average voltage obtainable from a single cell is about 2.1 volt, and the specific gravity of the sulfuric acid used is 1.26 to 1.28 at 25 degrees Celsius temperature. The various applications of lead acid battery includes vehicles, electric vehicles, solar PV systems, wind electric systems, and for various power system applications. So we know solar PV system and wind electric system produces variable output. Their output is not continuous, so they need an energy storage system. So lead acid battery can be used there. So now the advantages of lead acid battery. They are modular in nature. Different cells, so different modules. So by combining the required number of modules, we could get the required capacity. So now they are capable of rapid reversal of operation. That is, rapid reversal between charging and discharging is possible. Charge a battery, but discharge load connect it is possible. It can easily discharge. It permits dispersed distribution by locating near the load centers. Batteries are portable, so they can be placed near the load centers and power can be spread over a large area, wide area. Now the disadvantages: high cost and short life. Their life is short. So the reason for short life of a lead acid battery is that, so we have already said that during the discharging process, lead sulfate is formed at both the electrodes and it replaces the original active materials. This lead lead sulfate varumbo. Lead inde athrayum density illa lead sulfate. Lead is more denser. So lead lead sulfate varumbo, the lead sulfate cannot properly fill the places of lead. Correct fit cheyan pattathilla. So a portion of the lead sulfate will fall onto the electrolyte and it will remain at the bottom of the electrolyte. So this is a loss in active material. Lead loss ayikondirikku. So this reduces the life of the battery. And an ordinary battery cannot be allowed to discharge more than 50% of its stored energy. Etra stored energy undengilum, we can utilize only about 50% of that stored energy. We cannot discharge a battery more than that. Heavy weight of the battery and it is having a high internal impedance, which will lead to voltage fluctuations during charging and discharging. So next one is the hydrogen storage. Next type of chemical energy storage is the hydrogen storage. So hydrogen, we know that hydrogen is a secondary fuel, so which can store energy as chemical energy. So hydrogen is an element. So if we are storing hydrogen, we can say that that is a form of chemical energy storage. So we can produce hydrogen in two ways: electrolysis of water as well as thermolysis of water. So what is electrolysis? Electrolysis is the process of decomposing water into its constituents, hydrogen and oxygen, by means of passing electric current through it. Whereas thermolysis is the process of the same process, decomposing water into its constituent components by using thermal energy by means of a number of chemical reactions. So by both the methods, hydrogen can be produced from water. So here electrolysis in the figure ആണ് കാണിച്ചിരിക്കുന്നത്. So if excess electrical energy is available from a renewable energy source like wind or solar cell, this can be used in an electrolyzer for separating, decomposing water into hydrogen and oxygen, and that hydrogen thus separated can be stored properly, and this can be then used in a fuel cell producing electrical energy. എപ്പോഴാണ് electrical energy തിരിച്ചു വേണ്ടത് അങ്ങനെയുള്ളപ്പോൾ this hydrogen can be used in a fuel cell for producing electrical energy. So here it is shown that the oxygen that is separated from water is ejected to the atmosphere. That is not the actual case. The oxygen that is separated from the water will be pure, very pure oxygen, and this can be sold for some chemical processing plants, for some chemical reactions to take place. Some industries can use this pure oxygen, and for the working of the fuel cell, oxygen is required again. So at that time, oxygen from the atmosphere can be used. So this is the operation of operation of a hydrogen energy storage system. So now, energy storage in the form of hydrogen is actually chemical energy, and the chemical energy in the hydrogen can be converted either into thermal energy, mechanical energy or electrical energy. Electrical energy ഉണ്ടാകുന്ന ഒരു മെത്തേഡ് നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞു. ഫ്യൂൽ സെല്ലിൽ ഹൈഡ്രജൻ യൂസ് ചെയ്താൽ we can produce electrical energy. Now, hydrogen is a fuel. Hydrogen can be used as a fuel in vehicles. So അപ്പോൾ ഫ്യൂൽ ബേൺ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ എന്തുണ്ടാവും? Thermal energy. So chemical energy is converted to thermal energy. Now, hydrogen can be used in hydrogen fired steam turbines. So when the steam turbine rotates, mechanical energy is produced, and if the steam turbine is connected to a generator, electrical energy can be produced. So now, we have already discussed how we can separate hydrogen from water. Now we have to store this separated hydrogen. And there are three methods for storing hydrogen. First one is gaseous form. So that gaseous hydrogen can be stored in large quantities in some cylinders. So now it is liquefied and stored. And another form is metal hydride form. Say for example, when dimagnesium nickel reacts with hydrogen, the hydride is formed. The dimagnesium nickel hydride is formed, and also heat is liberated. It is an exothermic reaction. This is a reversible reaction. Whenever we need hydrogen back, we can just obtain the hydrogen by heating this dimagnesium nickel. If dimagnesium nickel hydride is heated, hydrogen will be liberated. So that is all about hydrogen storage. And now the reversible chemical reaction storage. So what is a reversible chemical reaction? It is nothing but a reaction that can occur in both the directions simultaneously. Simultaneous ആയിട്ട് forward reaction നടക്കും, reverse reaction നടക്കും. So that is a reversible chemical reaction, and such a reaction can be used for storing chemical energy. So here just an example for a reversible chemical reaction is shown. A compound AB reacts with thermal energy when thermal energy is provided, or AB absorbs thermal energy and it is converted to its components, constituents A and B. Okay, and the reverse reaction, what is the reverse reaction? If A and B are combined, a compound AB is formed and also some amount of heat is generated. So this reaction can be used for storing thermal energy. Suppose namukku excess of thermal energy available aanennu vechu, we can use that energy for heating a compound which gets converted to its constituents. ഇനി നമുക്ക് ഈ കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂവൻറ്റ് കമ്പോണൻസിനെ സ്റ്റോർ ചെയ്ത് വെച്ചാൽ മതി. ഇനി എപ്പോഴാണോ നമുക്ക് ഈ തെർമൽ എനർജി ആവശ്യമുള്ളത്, വി ക്യാൻ കമ്പൈൻ ദീസ് ടു കമ്പോണൻസ്. അപ്പോൾ എന്ത് പറ്റും? കമ്പൈൻ ചെയ്ത് കഴിയുമ്പോൾ വീണ്ടും ഹീറ്റ് എനർജി ലിബറേറ്റ് ചെയ്യും. സോ ദിസ് ഇസ് ജസ്റ്റ് ആൻ എക്സാമ്പിൾ. എ ബി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരു എക്സാമ്പിൾ കാണിച്ചിരിക്കുകയാണ്. അങ്ങനെ റിയാക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്ന കെമിക്കൽ കോമ്പൗണ്ട്സിന് നമ്മൾ യൂസ് ചെയ്യും. സോ ഹിയർ ദ ഫോർവേഡ് റിയാക്ഷൻ, that is AB plus delta H gives A plus B. This is an endothermic reaction. Endothermic means it occurs at a high temperature with the absorption of heat. Whereas the reverse reaction, A plus B gives AB plus delta H. It is an exothermic reaction which occurs at a lower temperature. Exothermic means the reaction that liberates heat. So for forward reaction endothermic ആണ്, heat വേണം. So this occurs at a high temperature, and this is exothermic, heat liberate ചെയ്യുന്നു. So this occurs at a lower temperature. So, and there is a particular temperature above which the forward reaction take place. Forward reaction high temperature ലല്ലേ, ഇത് low temperature ലും. So that particular temperature above which the forward reaction takes place and below which the reverse reaction takes place is known as turning temperature. Turning temperature. So if the temperature is kept below the turning temperature, what will happen? The reverse reaction will happen and heat will be generated. So അപ്പോൾ ഹീറ്റ് എക്സസ് ആയിട്ട് നമുക്ക് അവൈലബിൾ ആണെങ്കിൽ നമുക്ക് ഈ ഫോർവേഡ് റിയാക്ഷൻ നടത്താം. അങ്ങനെ ഡിവൈഡ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു കോമ്പൗണ്ടിനെ നമുക്ക് ഹീറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് അതിൻ്റെ കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യുവൻസ് ആക്കി, ആൻഡ് ദ പ്രോഡക്ട്സ് ഓഫ് ദിസ് റിയാക്ഷൻ, ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് എ ആൻഡ് ബി, can be stored at ambient temperature for a very long duration. എത്ര നാൾ വേണേലും സ്റ്റോർ ചെയ്യാം at ambient temperature. And whenever this energy is needed back, we can combine these components and electrical energy can be liberated back. Thermal energy can be generated back. So now the advantages of reversible chemical reaction storage are high energy density. More amount of energy can be stored. Storage is possible at ambient temperature. We are storing thermal energy. Actually this is a method of storing thermal energy. പക്ഷേ ഹൈ ടെമ്പറേച്ചറിലാണോ നമ്മൾ സ്റ്റോർ ചെയ്യുന്നത്? അല്ല, we are just storing two components. For example A and B. We can store that at ambient temperature. അത് കമ്പൈൻ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ മാത്രമേ ഹീറ്റ് ഉണ്ടാവുന്നുള്ളൂ. So storage at ambient temperature is possible. Now low storage related investment cost. അല്ലേ, ambient temperature സ്റ്റോർ ചെയ്യാം. So no special facilities needed for storing the temperature. So low storage related investment cost. And it is suitable for long duration storage as well as long distance thermal energy transport at ambient temperature. Long duration la components in store ചെയ്യാം, ആ components അല്ലേ അതിനെ long distance transport ചെയ്യാം, etc. Now disadvantage is that technology is still immature. There is uncertainties about the use of the technology. So that is the disadvantage.